Welcome to God Friday Discussions. As we embark on this journey together, it's important to acknowledge the diversity of thoughts, beliefs, and experiences that each of us brings to the table. Our discussions are rooted in a spirit of exploration, learning, and mutual respect. The views expressed are those of the individual participants and are presented for the purpose of open dialogue and personal reflection. Please note, we recognize and honor the freedom of personal belief. This platform does not advocate for any singular viewpoint as the absolute authority on spiritual matters. Our discussions are intended as a safe space for sharing and growth. We encourage you to approach each session with an open heart and mind, but also respect your personal boundaries. If at any point you find the content not to your liking or comfort, you're free to disengage as you see fit. While we seek to provide enriching content, participation is entirely voluntary. We assume no responsibility for any personal decisions or interpretations made to our discussions. Our aim is to foster a community where curiosity, faith, and understanding can flourish. Thank you for joining us on this journey. And for today's topic, we're going to be discussing temptation. And temptation is definitely one of the things that it gets me a lot. So let's open up the discussion with a prayer. And this one is from the Howla, from the Baha'i religion. Blessed is the spot, and the house, and the place, and the city, and the heart, and the mountain, and the refuge, and the cave, and the valley, and the land, and the sea, and the island, and the meadow where mention of God hath been made, and his praise glorified. And let me do one more. Divine providence. This assemblage is composed of thy friends who are attracted to thy beauty and are set ablaze by the fire of thy love. Turn these souls into heavenly angels, resuscitate them through the breath of thy Holy Spirit. Grant them eloquent tongues and resolute hearts. Bestow on them heavenly power and merciful susceptibilities. Cause them to become promulgators of the oneness of mankind and the cause of love and concord in the world of humanity, so that the perilous darkness of ignorant prejudice may vanish through the light of the Sun of Truth. This dreary world may become illuminated, this material realm may absorb the rays of the world of spirit. These different colors may merge into one color, and the melody of praise may rise to the kingdom of thy sanctity. Verily, thou art the omnipotent and the almighty. So, when it comes to temptation, I think maybe the first question I wanted to get out there was, what are some ways you guys manage temptations? There's there's like a lot of things you can do: mindfulness, goal setting, breathing, support systems, substituting, um, positive reinforcement. So I'm curious, like, how do you guys have techniques to manage temptation?
And Sheraj, can we do this? Can we start from the beginning and let's look at what does temptation mean
Yeah, yeah.
first?
So the
More
general
professor.
definition of temptation is is the desire to do something, especially something wrong or unwise. It involves being attracted to actions or decisions that seem appealing at the moment, but are generally acknowledged as undesirable or harmful. And that's the general definition. And I got some other definitions too. So, for a religious context, in many religious teachings, temptation is often viewed as a test of a person's ability to choose good over evil. It's commonly associated with the allure of sins or acts that go against the divine commandments or moral laws. And a psychological perspective, from a psychological standpoint, temptation can be seen as a conflict between immediate reward and longer-term goals. It often involves impulse control, self-regulation, and the struggle between emotional desires and rational decision-making. And then ethical consideration. In ethics, temptation is an inclination to act in ways that might be beneficial to oneself but detrimental to others, or contrary to ethical norms and principles. So there's a lot, I think an interesting aspect of temptation is that short-term versus long-term thing, because you see a lot of that in other aspects of life too. The generally the long-term things are more beneficial, powerful, or something, and short-term stuff tends to be a little more temporary or weak or something like that. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
I think the way you
that's a very, very comprehensive definitions. Thank you.
yeah, that's exactly you took the words right out of my mouth.
Think ChatGPT.
I think a simpler way of putting it is just undisciplined. So what is discipline? Discipline is the ability to resist self-pleasure. So
Mhm. There
I
is
wouldn't say
a
discipline is
sense
the
of
ability to resist self-pleasure, because like you can do disciplined things and feel pleasure from it. I would say it's a thing, it's more just doing the things you say you're gonna do, or doing things that
health
you
it's just
commit to.
yeah.
semantics. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
But I do think that there is an aspect of self-denial in religion, in relation to the concept of temptation. Because I mean, it wouldn't be temptation if there wasn't the need for self-denial, right? I mean, one simple way I heard one in one movie, one guy, I forget which movie, but he had a very simple definition for temptation, and he basically said temptation's a bitch. I think that's pretty.
a powerful bitch.
uh, yeah,
Well, where does temptation come from?
Yeah,
that's
I'd say
a good one. Yeah.
so there was an interesting in the Bhagavad Gita, it one of the lines chapter 3 verse 37, I guess. The Supreme Lord said, "It is lust alone which is born of contact with the mode of passion and later transformed into anger. Know this as the sinful, all-devouring enemy in the world." And in the Vedas, the big set of books where the Bhagavad Gita comes from, they use the word kam or lust not only for sexual desires, but also to include all the desires for material enjoyment based on the bodily concept of the self. So I think the temptation kind of relates to that bodily concept of the self. I've been hearing a lot of like this kind of tension between the worldly world and spirit world, or your ego and your body versus um God, like your what you want
Correct.
versus God's will or something like that. So there's an aspect of that, I would say.
I was kind of thinking along the lines like the I guess looking from like the Abrahamic religions standpoint, and you could correct me if I'm wrong. Like the Jews kind of believe that the devil is like employed by God. I guess I don't know how to explain it. Like employed by God. Like he can't do anything unless God signs off with it. And I never truly understood that concept. So I kind of was curious to like, what do the what is Islam like? What is the stance on that? Where does What is temptation? Like, where does it come from? Who does it come from? What entity?
Well, in Islamic sort of the study of the self in Islam, there's a branch of study which relates to the self and human motives and the heart and things like that, like an internal study, right? And in that study, they pin it on two entities generally. One is the devil, right? So the devil's main job is to tempt you towards sin, right? So the devil is the that's his business. His entire job is temptation. But the devil could not tempt you. You didn't have an aspect of yourself that would be drawn to that. And in Islamic philosophy, or lack of a better word, there's an Arabic word for it. You have your body or your being, not your body, is divided into various parts. And the first part is called the lower self. And the lower self is attached to earthly pleasures. So
Yes,
it's
sexual.
sexual desires or the desire for name and fame, greed, avarice, things like that. Okay. Then you have the reprimanding self, which is part of your being that tries to keep your other part of your being in check. So it reprimands. So I'll give you an example, right? If I know I'm not supposed to drink sugar because my doctor said, look, you're diabetic, you got to stay away from sugar, right? There's a part of me that wants sugar. You understand? Then the reprimanding self, okay, will say, no, 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 but you can't have sugar. So I'll be in this battle within myself between wanting sugar and saying to myself, I can't have sugar. That's the second part of my being, right? The third part of my being is the one that has subjugated my being. In other words, it's like the pure self, meaning it's risen above the competition. Now there's not even a competition. There's no reprimand even. I am just absolutely in accordance with the will of God, period, without a temptation. That's the highest form of being. It's called nafsul mutma'inna, the contented self in Arabic, right? So these are the three aspects of your being. Now they divided into seven. These three can be further divided into seven. I mean, that's unnecessary to go into all of that. But so basically, in short, you have the devil, his job is to tempt you. But he can only tempt you if you are predisposed to that temptation because of how you live. If you're too attached to your earthly pleasures and your bodily pleasures, he'll be able to tempt you easily, right? But when you arise above that, you will have this voice of conscience telling you, no, but you can't, no, but you can't. But that's still not the goal because you're still in battle with yourself. It's still using unnecessary energy, in other words. But once you subjugated yourself, you arrive at a place where you're no longer tempted. That's the ideal state of being. So, in short, that's how it works. Yeah.
Oh, good explanation, man. Wow. I've I've read something similar, like Kabbalah. They have a similar explanation for how you were explaining it. Like when you talk about your lower half of your body, like that's our undisciplined area. It's like sexual in nature, and sexual is one of the hardest things as human beings we probably have trouble controlling. So it was interesting that just kind of like coincides. I wonder if it's just because it's that same reason. I don't know, like the thoughts are the same. Every time we
Yes.
talk, I just can't help but think that everybody's saying the same thing, just they got their own little,
Yeah,
you know?
to me it kind of sounded like chakras. Like you said, like it divides into seven or something, and there's seven chakras, and there's like the lower sex, or uh, I guess it's survival, ancestry, and then there's sex, uh, sexual creativity, and um, goes up, and you can, I
Mm.
guess you can infinitely divide it because it's kind of like light is kind of a spectrum, and
Mhm.
yeah, but then you just kind of like simplify it and segment it out into seven or three or whatever.
Mhm.
Would you say
No,
that
there
it's
was
like
a whole
chakras or?
was a whole ah, um, I don't know actually, because the thing is, I don't know too much about chakras, so I can't do the analogy, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But the point is, there was a whole segment of both the Muslim community and the Jewish community that were mystics. You know,
Oh, there it is. There it is.
they were mystics. They were Sufis essentially, and Sufism was not only exclusive to Islam. Although Sufism grew out of Islam, there were many Sufis who were in fact in other religious traditions but followed Sufism. Do
Mm.
you know what I mean? And one such person who was a great Islamic scholar, and he was a Jew, ironically, Maimonides, right? In the 12th century, he grew up in the Muslim world in Spain and then in Egypt. He practiced as a rabbi and he was a medical doctor. And he's one of the greatest rabbis ever to have lived, actually. He codified Jewish law, wrote books on it, mysticism, medicine, etc. But he was also celebrated as a great Islamic scholar in the Muslim world, I mean,
Wow.
because he was an Arab. He was an Arab. He spoke Arabic. His books were in Arabic, but he was a rabbi.
Mm.
So there's a lot of interpolation between the early period between Islamic scholarship and Jewish scholarship. They wouldn't want to acknowledge it today, obviously, but reality in history, there's a lot of uh, just like all scholarship. For example, in modern times now, if people share ideas around science, right? If they make a breakthrough in America, for example, it goes to all the rest of the world. So like that, because scholarship was a lot around religion and states of being, etc. Ideas used to be shared, you know. So there's a lot of common ideas that went around across religions. Although people of different religions wouldn't want to admit that because they want to say, no, no, ours is like the one, Actually, they actually shared a lot of ideas. Yeah.
Wow. We always
That's
get
super
schooled
cool.
every time you're on here. That's really cool. So temptation, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, Raj, where do you think it comes from? Where do you think temptation comes from, Raj?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of the thought that it has to do with like your identification with your body self, like your egoic self, and feel, we're human. We have our body, like we want to eat and have sex and do all these things that are pleasurable to the body because the body evolved over many years to like try and get sugar, try and have sex, and try and it like that's how it survives in the worldly world. And but the worldly
Well, we were
world
designed.
isn't necessarily the absolute truth. And so we as human beings are able to kind of conceptualize that for some reason, or just even think about that. And so we don't have to identify with the body or our ego. And but I think that so to answer your question, that's where I think it comes from. I think it comes from that identification, and then it just naturally comes from that because that's just how we're designed, I think, to have desires and
For,
stuff.
for me, for me, it always seems that when when things are going well for me and everything is okay, there's always that little stick poked at me, like look over here. So I guess I think that it actually does come from an evil entity, meant to deter us from what it is we're supposed to be doing. And that's advancing what do we call it? Advancing spiritually, advancing God's kingdom, doing God's will. Just it seems like for me, every single time everything is going well, there's that little whisper, like, look over here, you know? I don't know if that's the case for everybody.
But I think, like, I think we need to also ask ourselves, why is temptation evil? I mean, why can't temptation be good? I'm just being a devil's advocate now, yeah, right? Why can't temptation be good? I mean, what's
I
essentially wrong with what's essentially wrong with saying, look, I wanna let go, so now I go and do it. I mean, I'm just like, or I wanna eat all day today, so I'm just gonna do it. Or you know what I mean? Oh,
yeah.
my engine is sounding so loud today. I'm just gonna drive 120 miles per hour, right? Because I feel like. Right? Right. I mean,
Hey,
you
that's
know,
a hell
like
of
you
that's a hell
really
of a
thought,
question.
yeah.
I would argue
So
that temptation and maybe all these things could be good because it allows us to understand it gives us discrimination of good versus bad. So we can
So
kind
for
of figure
for
out, yeah, what do you think?
for like the act of actually biting on the temptation, are the consequences conducive for what it is you feel is the right thing? I
I
guess that
see
would
what
be
you're
the
saying.
question.
So there's a cost benefit analysis coming into it.
There it is.
Because yeah.
There it is.
What is the reward for being impulsive? Or the price you're gonna pay for being impulsive is gonna be much greater than what the pleasure out of that impulse derived. So
Yeah.
there's that also,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
And sometimes the reward isn't something you're willing to you necessarily want, you know?
Mhm.
And so from what you were saying, Matt, like when things are going well, you'll get, that little, suggestion in your ear, or, what is that urge. And I can relate to that a lot. Like when I feel like I'm doing well, or I'm trying hard and doing a good job, then I feel like, oh, okay, I can do this because I've done all these good things, and then let me just do this sinful thing. Because I've been working hard. I can have a little treat or something like that. And I think the the thing that is missing there is God's grace, because when you think of it as you're doing all these things to be good or whatever, then you're putting in that effort, but really you should be trying to do it with from the grace of God. Like, so it's not actually trying, you actually just live in God's grace or something like that, and then that's what uh just that's how you move forward in life. Because I like when do the I do the trying thing, and I'm like, oh yes, I'm trying. But it seems like that's the problem. It's like you're you're not supposed to try so much, I guess.
Well, the God's grace thing, I think, is an accurate statement. Um, if you do succumb to your earthly desire and the consequences, the risk analysis wasn't working out in your benefit. Yeah, God's grace is still there, right? I think that's across all Abrahamic religions, you know. Um, I don't know. Temptation is something I kind of struggle with.
Oh
You know, the
yeah.
thing is, there's another dimension. There's another dimension I think that we can bring into the discussion of temptation, and that is order versus chaos. Because I think temptation is a chaos making uh, phenomena, I guess, if you could put it that way, you know? Because we know that, I mean, even outside the framework of religion, we know that in order to achieve anything long term, you can't act on impulse, or you can't often act on impulse. So I'll give you an example, right? If you're studying and like you want to get your degree, but now, okay, let's say Matt is studying, right? He wants to get his degree. But now Sheraj comes around and he says, "Hey, Matt, it's the weekend, man. Let's go and party." But
Let's
Matt
get
has an
high.
Go to the beach.
yeah, high. Let's get high, right? But Matt has an exam on Monday. Okay, so Matt has to forego the short-term pleasure. In this case, Sheraj is the devil, right? So because he wants to mislead him, he wants to get high. Meanwhile, he has serious goals and objectives that he needs to accomplish, right? He can't repeat the whole academic year because he got high before the exam, for example. So his long-term goal would prevent him from succumbing to that temptation. He's going to say, "You know what, Siraj, um, I got an exam on Monday," right?
Yeah, I
So
think that's that.
one way to overcome temptation, I guess, is to have long-term goals. I don't know what you guys think about that. Yeah.
Well, that kind of touched on what I was saying at the beginning, the ability to resist self-pleasure, right? And probably should have added something on it for a sacrifice for something greater,
Yeah.
In the moment, I could say, yeah, I'm gonna go smoke this blunt with Raj, and we're gonna rock out, and we're gonna go to the beach, and we're gonna get drunk, and then the Monday comes, and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't study for my test at all. Then I'm back to God, like, hey, please help me, God, When all reality, the consequences weren't necessarily God, it was me doing, succumbing to my temptation or my earthly desires. So, yeah, that's a interesting spin you put on it.
Although I imagine that a God Friday discussion while everyone is high might be very interesting to watch after.
We could try it sometime. But I really like what you say about having long-term goals to help,
Mhm.
just keep you focused rather than getting tempted by the short-term pleasures or benefits of something. I think that's a great point.
I
So it's
think that's also
temptation.
one of the strategies. I think one of the strategies, if we can say God has a strategy, okay, just humor me for a minute, okay? One of the strategies I think that God has, and I'm not saying that definitively because I can't speak for God, but it appears to me that way, is that telling you that your goal is heaven, which is after this life, right? Is like the ultimate long-term goal, you know, which is sort of
Mm.
the anchor that's supposed to keep you away from temptations that are gonna result in you not getting there. That's one way of looking at it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I never thought of heaven that way, but that's a cool way to look at it.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a good way of explaining it. That should be our ultimate goal, right? So, does that mean
Hopefully long
that we
term.
should suffer? Does that mean that we should suffer here while we're on Earth? I guess is that my question.
Um, well, you see, I think what it means is that the nature of human existence is that without discipline and without clear guidelines, we will suffer. So we see things
Mm.
we see things as back to front. So I will see myself as suffering because my son Mahmoud at the moment, he's suffering because I'm making him carry water bottles 5 times, 4 times up and down the stairs every day as training. He wants to be a Super Saiyan, right? And then I'm letting him sit in the splits position every day, So in his mind, he's suffering, right? It's torture, right? But I mean, uh, there's a certain level of joy in that sense of accomplishment, right?
Hmm.
So in a sense, hedonism, when we just go after our immediate pleasures, right, brings on a much worse suffering than abstinence, than staying away from things. So
Well, anything
you know
anything in excess is horrible, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, would I guess maybe I got to rephrase that. Would like abstinence in excess be horrible?
Because abstinence is a type of suffering, of course. I mean, look, I mean, when you didn't have a girlfriend or you were single for a long time, it was absolutely horrible, right? It's abstinence, man. You know, so
Forced
of
abstinence.
course, yeah.
Uh,
But I mean, but there's a certain level of a sense of accomplishment. I mean, I found, for example, the times that I, for example, traveled and I was away from my family for a long time or from my wife for a long time, I got a lot of stuff done. A lot. I published more books during those times. You know what I'm saying? So there's it's as if there's a blessing in abstinence, you know, and in directing your attention away from your pleasure or away from what you think are your needs, you know?
by the way, Raj, can we tag those books to this video? Can we tag those links to those books to this video?
What? Wait, sorry, what books?
The books your
My
brother
books.
wrote.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Check the description for book links.
There it is. Gotcha. There it is.
All right.
Check the description for his video or his books. He's got one that tells you how to choose a wife and keep her too. So for you young single guys out there, actually some of us married men need to probably read that too, you know. So
Yeah, thanks for that, guys. Yeah.
definitely.
So, one thing that a, a verse I got from the Surah Al-Baqarah that
Hmm.
I thought was kind of uh cool is basically like God won't give you more than you can handle in terms of like sinning potential or something like that. So it goes Allah does not charge a soul except with that within its capacity. It will have the consequence of what good it has gained, and it will bear the consequence of what evil it has earned. Our Lord do not impose blame on us if we have forgotten or erred. Our Lord, and lay not upon us a burden like that which you laid upon those before us. Our Lord, whoops. Yeah, our Lord, and burden us not with that which we have no ability to bear, and pardon us, and forgive us, and have mercy upon us. You are our protector, so give us victory over the disbelieving people. And I thought that was kind of nice that that God wouldn't like try and tempt like I don't have a temptation to like get $10 million to like do something nefarious or something, right?
Hmm.
Like because maybe I would. Maybe it's like, oh, this isn't that bad. Let me get $10 million real quick.
Exactly. Which is why we can't also judge. I always tell people, you're so critical about your leaders and your politicians, for example, right? But you don't know how you'd be if you had that level of power in your hand. You understand? You might be
Facts.
worse. You don't know. I mean, I don't
Facts.
know how I'd be, to be honest. I mean, I can sit there as a poor man and say that, oh, I'm all righteous, but guess what? I don't have the wherewithal to be that corrupt. I mean, it requires, some level of means, etc. Access. It's the same like the guy who's I'm sorry to put it this way, but you get the guy who he can't ever get any woman, right? He's just not the type of guy who can, and then he judges the bad boy who gets all the girls and says, "Oh, look
Yep.
how capable he is." Right?
Yeah.
But the thing
What a
Hey,
is, he
stop
bad
was in
guy.
talking
a
about me
position.
like that.
Is that you, Raj? Are you the hater, Raj? Are you the hater?
you
Mr.
know.
Two Wives over
But if
there.
he were in that position, he'd probably do the same. So that's also where
Ah.
where temptation is like the where your sort of gumption is being tested is not when you can't do something, it's when you can, but then you don't. You know?
Ah, bam. Mic drop moment.
Yeah.
Wow,
Sound effect.
that's a good point. Where are the sound effects? We got to get those back up here. Good. Mic drop moment, man. Definitely.
You did that one, huh? MashaAllah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, like when we're, for example, when we're when we're fasting, like when you fast, I don't know how often you fast, Mohammed. I'm sure you do it frequently, like abstain from things. But when we're fasting, we're supposed to do it from something that, like, if you're that guy that can't get a woman, well, I'm gonna fast. I'm gonna abstain from having sex. Well, you're not really abstaining from anything because it's not happening for you. It's not happening for you, man.
Abstain from
Yeah.
You
porn.
know? Yeah, there it is. Well, that's actually a good one. I'm sure there's a boatload of men out there that struggle with porn. You know, looking at that. Try abstaining from something that you actually do that you know you shouldn't be doing. Yeah, that's a really good point when I think about it. And that was a funny analogy. I really hope that isn't you though, Raj. You're not that guy, are you?
Maybe a little bit. There's a little bit of that guy in me.
Why are you with
Porn
them?
is so easy, man. I generally try to, like, even on social media, if there are like girls that are constantly posting pictures of themselves, like check at my boob, check at my ass, I usually block them because I don't want to have to look at those things all the time, right? But it's so difficult because then I have like girls, sliding in my DMs like totally butt naked, or friending me, and then I click on it to see who's this that friended me, and then it's like one of these OnlyFans people, whatever, and then I block it again. So it's so difficult to manage the no porn thing just in the normal course of your life, like online, you know,
Yeah, I'll
because
be
like
watching
for
a
me, literally
cartoon and
every
then a cartoon will like have a girl like doing sexually explicit something rather, and then it's like, oh,
in a cartoon, for kids.
it's crazy.
So it's
You got me
we live in a very hypersexualized environment,
you got me thinking right now. Like I have to empathize with younger men. I always have this inability to empathize with younger men. I feel like there's like a generational gap where certain values were lost. But then I look at it like you just said. So in this generation, right? Think about how easily accessible things are that weren't accessible when we were growing up. You know, a child could literally go on the internet and see strangers having sex with each other. And there's a study that says like when a 4-year-old sees that in like their brain is permanently damaged. Like there's a permanent like alteration in the way their brain functions from that moment moving forward. So when we were growing up, you had to like talk to a girl, right? You had to actually go up to her and talk to her. You couldn't just message her. So you had the fear of being rejected, right? Like face to face, which if you were one of those guys that did get the girls, you got rejected a lot. I'm sorry. If you're a guy saying that you got every girl in the world, you just were easy to you weren't afraid of rejection.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Think
You are
about
about
think about how much more meaningful relationships would be, how much more meaningful like marriages would be if only woman you saw was your wife. You didn't have an ability to see another naked woman. You know what I mean?
That's the whole reason why I uh make an effort, a concerted effort to avoid sexualizing women or looking at women in a sexual way other than my own women who are lawful to me, because I don't want to damage my sex life. I mean, I like having sex and I like enjoying having sex with the woman I'm supposed to have sex with, So if you are constantly gonna look at other women or desire other women or lust after other women, you're gonna feel like the woman you're with is boring. I mean, that's for everyone. That's just how it is. That's human nature, right? So, I mean, in order to protect your marriage, the way the Quran puts it, you gotta lower your gaze. You know, you
Yeah.
can't be sexualizing women, looking at them with your eyes in a way that sexualizes them, because it's not your to do that. They're not yours. You know. Yeah.
And here in the States, it's like really difficult because like women, they have this like in women's empowerment movement that thinks that sexualizing themselves makes them more powerful, I guess, you know. And as men, you're walking down the street. How, if we're supposed to be godly, man, how do we avoid it when it's in your face everywhere you go? You go to the store. Sometimes you go to church. It's there, you know. Wherever you go, there's that aspect of a woman that probably is dressing a little provocative, and it's got this narrative that it's just she's just expressing herself, or so what if you're looking at her, that's your problem. You know, that's like a form of temptation to me. Like that's like the devil throwing something at us.
It's a definite temptation. Yes, it's definitely a temptation, and it's deliberate. It's deliberate. It is to, I think, break down society from godliness. You know,
Hmm.
it's deliberate because the fact is that the kind of attention that women get from random men, sexual attention, is also not good for the woman in question. You know, it's not only bad for the men because now they're going to be lusting after random women instead of the woman they're supposed to feel lust for. You know, it's also damaging that woman because one day when that woman, for example, has a steady relationship, or she gets married, she finds that she can't uh, be contented with the lustful attention of just one man, which is what the relationship is now going to require. She battles to stick to those parameters because she's used to all this attention, sexual attention. But now, obviously, her husband or whatever, her significant other, isn't going to like it. So she's going to try to not encourage that, but she can't not encourage it because she's so used to it. You know? So that's kind of what breaks down relationships a lot of the time.
Yeah, temptation is destroying the world.
So that makes me wonder, in Saudi Arabia, do most women wear the full
The
burqas
veils.
or the the scarf
Yeah,
or
there's very little. I think there's almost zero human temptation in Saudi Arabia at all because there's nothing to see.
yeah.
You
And what
know,
do you think of that?
your interaction.
Do you think it's better that way, or what do you think about it? Like, because you lived in America for a bit, so you know what it's like over here.
Yeah, I lived in America. I lived in South Africa. I lived in Arabia. I've traveled various parts of Arabia. So yeah, I've seen a lot of different cultures and expressions of sexuality in the culture. The thing I like about the culture in Saudi Arabia is that it's very nice to be married in Saudi Arabia because your sexual attention is really just on your wife. You know, because you don't have that on the outside. Like when you go out, a woman can't flaunt their bodies. It's against the law. They can't do it. So there is no temptation, sexual temptation anyway, that way, you know? Um,
So
where
you can't even really even see like the curvature, like the curviness of a woman, can you? There.
no, you can't. And in
So
Saudi
like every
Arabia, because in Saudi Arabia, even though women are completely covered, if you were to stare at a woman too long, you might offend her. So you become in the habit of just basically not staring at women
wow.
because they get offended, they might get offended, or worse, what could be worse, and that is if a brother or father or husband is with her and then he thinks she's
You
staring at
might get your ass kicked, boy. You're
that'll be
gonna get your
worse,
ass kicked.
right? So you just get in the habit because you understand the culture is conservative. So you just get in the habit of just avoiding the woman and you're fine, you know. But it is difficult. I guess it must be difficult for me. Like I'm married, so it's okay for me. But I guess it probably the younger people who are single might find that a bit difficult because they obviously want access to women. You know.
Well, as a man, right? So as men, it's in our nature to want to mate.
Yes.
When I mean, and have sexual relations with a mate. Like it's not that's our nature. So if you're like a young man over there, how do you go about like getting into a relationship? Like obviously the physical aspect of a woman, like it does matter. I think it does. I don't like it does matter in a relationship, and if you don't have the ability to see what she looks like underneath all that, you know what I
Well,
mean?
you
I
know
don't know if that.
what happens here is what happens here, the way they do it. Because I ask people that question. Because look, I'm a Westerner. I might be Muslim, but I'm a Westerner and I'm from a Western culture. In Western culture, you go directly to the woman, you chat her up. But even if you're a Muslim, you still do that. And then eventually you ask her father if you can marry her, right? But you do kind of have some access to her. It's not like you don't have access to her, right? But in this culture, what they do is they usually work through the network of their family, right? And then the for example, a guy would ask his sister, he'll say, "Look, I saw this woman from afar, but he can't obviously just go up and speak to her. It's like considered uncultural. Let's put it that way, right?" So he'll ask his sister and he'll say, "Listen, can you speak to this girl for me?" You know, and then it's very formal, and then he'll have to go ask the girl's father if he can speak to her. But obviously, this is now in the interest of marriage, right? And then when he does get to know her, so he'll be able to exchange numbers now because they said, okay, he can. And then as he gets to know her, um, he's allowed to see her without the veil and without all the clothing inside her house as she would normally appear.
Ah.
So during the
So
courtship phase, he is allowed to see her as she would normally appear inside her house. Not naked, obviously, but
yeah.
still relatively modestly dressed, but just not covered completely.
So what if? So what if like under all that clothing she's not very attractive, man? Can you like, hey, you know what? This ain't gonna work out, or is that a
Yeah, you
thing?
can.
Or
They do that. Actually, they do. They do. They are allowed to because look, it's not like he committed to her in any way. They don't yet have a relationship. Like he's never touched her or anything. He just expressed interest, right? So
yeah?
he's allowed to say, "Look, I'm not interested." They kind of accept
What,
it.
will the family get mad and try to kick your ass up for doing that?
No, they won't
Okay.
because they do understand. Look, you didn't see it. I mean, you can't commit to. You understand? That's the whole reason
That's
why they
blind faith
invite
right
you to the
there.
house. Yeah, that's the reason they invite you to the house so that you can see her. Because when she goes outside, she's got to wear the abaya and the cover up and all of that. So they'll say, okay, come home. That's how you get to see her. But they have in some cultures, I'm not sure here because I never got that far with the discussion. But in some cultures, they have a very subtle way of doing it. Where, for example, the girl also obviously has to decide whether she wants to continue the conversation with this guy. And then one guy was telling me that they make tea, the girl has to bring tea, right, for the guy. And if it's weak tea, it means something, and if it's milk tea, it means something else. So if the tea is weak, I forget which one means what. If the tea is weak, then that means okay, no. And if it's milky, then that means yes, I want to continue the conversation. So they have like subtle cultural ways to avoid the offense around
Mm,
the
that's so
delicate
Wow.
interesting.
negotiation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's kind of how they do it because there's not a culture of dating, like frequent dating. It's kind of like a controlled dating format for dating, but
Yeah,
it's
it
not
sounds a
like
lot more like courtship culture rather than dating culture.
Yes, a courtship culture. Yes,
Because
it's
dating
not.
feels
Yeah,
more casual or something, but this is very formal and
it's casual. No, no, this is serious. Yeah.
yeah, totally.
So they do allow them to court for a while and then to kind of come to the decision. You know. Yeah.
Is it
And
is it
so,
encouraged? Is it encouraged for like younger, like the women? So like if your daughters, do you encourage your daughters to be like maintain themselves, take care of themselves, like look like attractive women?
Definitely. Yes. Definitely. I mean, they have to. Um, they have to be. Look, okay. In these cultures, in Muslim cultures, you want your daughter to get married. Like even me, I want my
Yes.
daughters to get right. So I also want them to be able to marry men who are high value, right? Which means what? Which means they have to be high value,
Yep.
you know? So obviously I want them to be attractive. I want them to be chaste, to be pure, because high value men, that's what they like. I'm a man, I know that. So I'm gonna try to make sure, okay, somebody's gonna come see my daughter. You'll know, okay, this is a girl who I needed to come through her father to get to her, which means that she could not have been a loose girl because people were not anyone was allowed to come. All these kinds of. Because the thing is like about Muslim culture in a way is that if I have like free access to a woman, right? Immediately as a Muslim guy, I'll think to myself, okay, who else have free access to this? You
Mm,
understand? I kind of
well,
want
that's
to go.
okay.
I want a girl whose father's gonna tell me, hey, watch out, because I'm gonna feel good about that now. I'm gonna be like, oh, okay, right? Somebody was keeping the guys in check here, right? So if he's gonna allow me to marry his daughter, guess what? I lucked out this time, because he didn't just allow anybody to talk to his daughter, right? So that's kind of the thing about the culture. Yeah.
Really cool.
does spandex pants, you don't ever see women wearing spandex in Saudi Arabia, I'd imagine, right?
No.
Yeah,
No. Uh,
that's one of them things here in the States. You see it everywhere, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, when I was in middle school, I
Yeah.
was like, oh man, this is awesome. But now that I'm older, I'm like, oh my God, everyone, oh, this is not good. I can't be looking at
Yeah.
all these girls like that all the time.
yeah, because spandex is basically naked, right? It's basically naked. Yeah.
Basically naked,
And I mean,
yeah.
you're right. I mean,
You can
you're
see
right, man. You're showing the curvature. You're showing exactly what's going on. Like, if she's got a camel toe, you can see the camel toe. You know what I mean? Like,
Look, I never had a Saudi wife, so I don't know what Saudi women wear outside of being outside, you know?
Hmm.
So I imagine they just wear
wow.
normal clothes. But I don't know really. I mean, I've only ever seen Saudi women wearing abayas, the cloaks. So I wouldn't know. Yeah.
I wonder if going back. I don't wonder. It's evident. Having strict guidelines of how you should present yourself definitely prevents like all these divorce issues we have and uh, children coming out of wedlock and just broken relationships left and right. I also want to throw something else in there, like technology also ruins things.
Yeah,
Like when
social
you,
media. I mean, statistically, they say that social media accounts for a large percentage of divorces. Yeah.
well, social media, pornography, I'm sure, you name it. Just you have access to so much stuff that we shouldn't have access to. When you were in a relationship prior to internet, cell phones, any type of technology, like you used to have to write a letter to a woman, right? And maybe you didn't hear from her for a week. Maybe your correspondence, maybe a 20-minute conversation actually lasted 3 weeks. So you had this desire to talk more. And then now we could just talk to each other whenever we want to talk to each other. I'm almost wondering, it's going to sound bad. I'm almost wondering if like we should be talking to each other as much as we do.
I think the problem is that we do talk to each other often, but it's not face to face. And I think that creates a kind of psychosis because as humans, we're very tribal in nature, and our societies evolved out of groups, like troops, like how monkeys operate in a troop, right? That's how we operated as human beings, you know? But a lot of us nowadays, we live where we only see two or three people face to face in our immediate surroundings, and then we talk to other people online.
Like
And
this.
online is sort of it's a half interaction. It's it's half the interaction really. There's a large dimension to communication that is missing online. Because
Yeah,
80% of communication is based on social cues, body language. Uh, there's a lot going on with people, and there's a whole dimension that's stripped away, unfortunately,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what I'm
Me
hearing
and
from
Raj
what
have
you
done a
were
lot of
saying, Matt,
online
is that
communication.
the short term versus long term thing, like um, that instant gratification versus, having to wait for your gratification or something like that.
Well, I guess I was saying was back before we had like divorce issues. Like obviously, there's a huge divorce issue in the Western culture. We just think it's you don't you don't like this person anymore. Just get divorced. So find somebody else that you like now. Find a new toy, right? Which is the wrong way to approach marriage by any circumstance. But back when, like men had to go to work for sometimes 2 weeks, they didn't see their family, right? And there was no telephones, maybe, or maybe they did have a telephone when it cost a lot of money to call long distance. You remember long distance calling? Now you just call I can call Raj from right here in Chicagoland area to California over there, and there's no fee for it. It's the same as calling the person next door to me, you know. But you didn't have this immediate all these means of communication. I'm almost wondering. I guess I wonder if we're over communicating, like, and it's causing more issues. I don't know. Is that
I would say no.
that's what's
I
going
would
on?
say being able to communicate quickly is actually probably more beneficial than detrimental. But I think the quality of communication is really important. Like if you're saying, uh, like, oh, if you're like complaining about something or, um, I don't know, like talking shit or something like that, then that's probably not the best. But if you're trying to produce something or create something that helps others, then hey, the faster the better, right?
No, I could agree with that aspect. I guess in our relationships, are we over communicating? Are we should we be talking about every single thing? You know? And then now,
Matthew, the thing is, the problem is why people communicate a lot more or talk a lot more to each other about everything is because there isn't a common core that we all agree on and that we can take for granted. In the past, people lived in a village. The village had one church and one priest and one tradition, and there was a common core, and everybody agreed on it. And you didn't need to talk about half of what we talk about. It was just taken for granted. You understand? But
yeah,
because we live in a globalized world and you meet somebody from a total different, she might still be Christian, but her upbringing would be different, her church would be different, her philosophy of life would be different, her approach to things. There's so many things you just can't take for granted. So, you know, and so now it becomes a situation where you kind of need to communicate about so much more. You can't just
yeah, that
you can't make basic assumptions. I'll give you an example because I've seen it a lot with like intercultural marriages. When I counsel people, and then I realized a lot of the miscommunication is because the guy made assumptions based on his culture, and he didn't understand that he's making assumptions based on his culture, but the girl is from a different culture, and then she made assumptions based on her culture and didn't understand that she's making those assumptions. You know what I mean? So, like a simple example, right? You get a guy maybe from a culture he's never done housework in his life. Okay, because in his household, his mother and his sisters did that. Guys didn't do that, right? That's the culture he's from. And then he marries a girl whose father, every night when he came home from work, used to like to wash the dishes, and on the weekend he used to do the washing. That was her type of background, right? And then suddenly now she's married to this guy, and he doesn't want to do any housework, and she says, "Oh, he must not love me because, why doesn't he want to help me in the house? My dad always helped my mom in the house." You understand what I'm saying? And he's saying to himself, "Oh, what a lazy bitch. She just doesn't want to clean." Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh man.
You see what I'm saying? So now it requires a conversation, right?
Hey,
You know?
but
So yeah.
maybe we can do a relationship topic one of the weeks because that I don't know. It seems like interesting to do a relationship.
No, we definitely can do that. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just want to take it back to temptation. We kind of been focusing a little bit on sexual temptation, but there's also other kinds of temptation, like material temptations, temptation of power and success, temptation of food and physical pleasure, um, laziness and procrastination. That's probably my biggest temptation, vice, whatever. Um, social and peer pressure. That's also a temptation.
I'd say social and peer pressure is the one I struggle with the least. Like I have no problem with that. Like I'm usually like the black sheep everywhere I go, so I don't have a problem like standing outside the box, you know. So I'm pretty good with that one, but a lot of the other ones, not so good to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. I think I've succumbed to all
Yeah.
the temptations.
Yeah.
You
No, I
do?
struggle. I struggle with temptations of power a lot because, like, there's been times in my life people have offered me lots of money and power, and I've said no. I've always said no. But it's not to say that it has been easy for me to say no, because I mean, who doesn't like money and who doesn't like power, right? But I mean, you can't obviously sell your soul for those things, right? So it depends how you acquire it. So that's a temptation when you move up in the world. That becomes an increasingly a greater temptation because when people realize that they can move through you or work through you to achieve their ends, they're willing to offer you a lot, you know, and you are tempted to turn a blind eye to what that end might be. You just like
Mm,
focus here on this because this is the transaction. Never mind what the result is. 'Cause you could do that. You could
wow.
do that. But then, are you going to sleep at night? So there's that. Those are also temptations that you can start to experience. Because
Yeah.
unfortunately, the world we live in is that a lot of the power structures in the world are corrupt, and people gain power usually through corruption. I've seen it over and over, you know. And people also gain fame through corruption. Like Andrew Tate's a good example. Like Andrew Tate became wealthy, became famous through corruption, right? Then he turned around, decided to renounce that corruption, and then they threw him in jail because he made a deal with the devil, but then he broke the deal. He was supposed to continue to be hedonistic, continue to promote gambling, and continue to promote the OnlyFans type thing and the corruption that he was promoting, right? But when he decided that okay, he's gonna move away from those things, what happened to him, right? Because you get to that level of fame through corruption. Unfortunately, that's usually how it works. You got to speak to the things that these players speak to. That's going to empower them in their corruption. We see it. I see it all the time when I make a misogynistic. Now I'm notoriously known for my misogyny. So when I make a misogynistic comment, right, it goes like so many people view my misogynistic content, right? But when I say something about the Bible or something that promotes unity between Muslims and Christians and Jews, it never gets any views, right? So the world of fame and the world of power is sort of, the algorithm is geared towards corruption. But even before times of algorithms, it was like that already, you know? And so that's why those temptations are particularly dangerous. I mean, if you look at Jordan Peterson, as an example, he became famous. He published a very good book. He preached to young men. He helped lots of people. But look at him now.
Oh man, yeah. Like I was watching something on him. They said he makes, the amount of money he makes is absurd. Like I don't even think he knows. But if I had to gather, it's probably close to about 100 million a year.
Yeah.
Or more.
I
So
never
yeah,
thought
what do
of Jordan Peterson as like corrupt or doing things in the wrong way, though. What? How? Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Definitely. He's not anymore. He's not as succinct as he used to be. He's not as clear anymore. He's not as and aside from the fact that he doesn't want to even comment on, for example, the genocide in Palestine, because he's afraid
Yeah.
that it'll piss Israeli followers off.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, he can't even honest it,
Well, he's not afraid that it'll piss his rally followers off. He's afraid that it'll ruin his bag. That's what I see a lot when these people, like they become famous. He became famous from his anti-trans stance that I remember on a college campus, right? And he wrote books, and then he did a lot of interviews, and now he does rallies where I've read he makes what, I don't know, almost 250,000, 300,000, like what the president makes to do a speech. He makes. He's doing like 20 or 30 of them every month, and he's writing books, and he's doing interviews on the side for all these different YouTube personalities or social media presences. And yeah, definitely he went from having a stance that money couldn't buy to chasing the bag.
Well, I mean, I can't say that for sure, but I mean, I've lost interest in him as a result, because I used to love listening to him, and he was always decisive and clear, and his stance was clear, and his morals were clear. But now I don't even know what is. I mean, he's incoherent. Because you see, when your value system gets corrupted, when you bend your values for any reason, you become incoherent.
Wow.
You can't anymore say something definitively because you don't stand on anything that's definitive. It's unfortunate. Yeah. So that's kind of the temptation.
So
Again, the temptation, that's a temptation of money, temptation of power.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
And
I
it's
have
also the risk-reward ratio.
Risk-reward ratio?
Yeah, it's also the risk-reward ratio, right? So what are you willing to sacrifice for the reward? There's always a trade-off, right? For some people, it might be their principles. They'll trade their principles for, a large sum of money. Or are you willing to sacrifice a large sum of money for your principles? And like Mohammad was saying, when somebody's dangling that large sum of money in front of your face, don't say what you wouldn't do, because you don't know. I don't know. If someone told me $1 million right now, if I run out here and say that I support the trans movement and all that, I don't know what I do.
Yeah, you'd run out, say I support the trans movement, and next week you'll say just kidding, right after they send you the check.
No, they would take it back. It'd be something in the contract. You have to sign a contract or something. Sell your soul. But I like how people say sell their soul, because it's like if you sell your soul, then what do you have? Like you may have this money or fame, but you don't have your soul, and you kind of lost everything after doing that.
What is it? Matthew 7, chapter 7. It says, "What good is it to gain the world, but to lose your soul in the process?" Right. So what good is it to gain all that money, but to lose all your dignity, to lose all your pride, to lose all your respect that you had, but you got all this money now. Well, now you're a slave to this money, right? Like you described Andrew Tate, he did all this stuff to gain all this money, and then when he decided to, like, you know what, man, I'm not going to condone this hedonistic values, or I'm not going to condone these, like, everything you talked about. And then, like you said, what happened? You're not playing by the rules anymore.
Exactly. So then he got arrested. He went to jail for it. He went to jail for the very things he was doing long time ago, which he was now renouncing.
Yep.
And
Wow.
that's how it is.
Yeah, it's super.
So once you start playing, by the, I guess, by wherever temptation comes from, I believe it comes from the devil. But once you start playing by that entity's, by their rules, like you can't stop playing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There's a song by I don't know if you guys remember this guy, DMX.
DMX, yeah, I remember him. He's like,
X gonna give it to you. So he had all these songs about how he was, they were like Damien part 1, 2, and 3, where he was making deals with the devil, and then when he tried to like go the other way, the devil was like, nah, remember like what I did for you? Like, so you got to help me out now. Now I need you to help me kill these 2 guys over here, He's like, I'll just do this one last time. And nope.
It's like usury, right? I mean, I think it was Jesus who said, never a money lender be, because I mean, that's the trap. You take out a big loan, on high interest, you're paying it off for the rest of your life. You're basically enslaved to the loan, right? But that whatever you bought with that money is be long gone after that,
You gotta look out for that interest rate.
Yeah, that's crazy, So that's another trap, the temptation of that. You're sitting with a credit card. You have 200,000 on the credit card, right? It's very easy to swipe that credit card,
But, yeah, it just keeps swiping.
Yeah.
So I like what the Bible says about being able to resist temptation. It kind of gives a little like positive reinforcement. So in 1 Corinthians or 1 Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 13, it says, "No temptation has taken you, but such a man can bear. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able. But with the temptation, make also the way of escape, that ye may be able to endure it." Sorry, that was a little more related to the surah quote, but in James.
No.
Oh yeah,
That's actually a really good quote, right?
Yeah.
So what we believe is that when you're tempted, like, God always provides a way out. Like, He gives you an out, like, and you have the free will to take that out or to act on that temptation.
No, that's a really good point. Like, yes, because God's merciful upon us, right? And in James chapter 1 verses 12 through 15, it says, "Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life with which the Lord has promised to those who love him. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then, when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. Yeah.
Yeah. So when they refer to death, right, they refer to separation from God. So temptation leads to sin, sin leads to separation from God. and then you're not under his like umbrella anymore, right? So it opens up the door for more temptation, for more sin, I guess, to walk in with you.
I would say that
So
God's
yeah,
always with us, but what I think is like the hardened heart is kind of, we've talked about that a little, like when you do these sinful acts and you get that hardened heart, you're no longer like trying to work with God. You're doing it on your own.
Yeah. God is always with you, but you're not always with God.
Yeah,
That's how I
yeah.
exactly what I was gonna say. Man, we took the words right out of my mouth. We don't have a drum.
Anyway, listen.
Exactly.
Oh, actually,
That's cool.
yeah, I
I
gotta go.
think this was a really good session. Should we close it out with a prayer?
Yeah, you go for it.
All right. All right, I'll wait, should I do it? Should I improvise or should I do a Baha'i prayer? I'm kind of digging the Baha'i prayers.
Whatever you want to
Whatever
do.
you want to do, Raj.
All right, let's do a Baha'i prayer. Okay. Since we're talking about temptation, I'll do a forgiveness prayer.
Okay.
Praise unto thee, O Lord. Forgive us our sins. Have mercy upon us and enable us to return to thee. Suffer us not to rely on aught else besides thee, and vouchsafe unto us, through thy bounty, that which thou lovest and desirest, and well beseemeth thee. Exalt the station of them that have truly believed, and forgive them with thy gracious forgiveness. Verily, thou art the help in peril and the self-subsisting.
Very good.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you.
Okay.
This was a great
Thank you, Pastor.
discussion.
Say hi to Shireen. I can't get hold of her, but yeah, say hi to her also. Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, we'll have to give you a call or something, do a video chat or something like that.
yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, see you guys.
Okay, see ya.
Later, guys. Later, man.